So Trinity, you've written a book called They Said This Would Be Fun, Race, Campus Life, and Growing Up, which is a memoir about your experiences in the 4 years you went to Western University. And it talks a lot about the relationships you had with your classmates, with your family, your romantic relationships, and a lot of the specifically anti-Black racism you experienced, and how you kind of like worked your way through that. So yes, that's what the book is about.
That is it.
For those of you, I mean, if you haven't read it, well, shame on you, because it's been out since March 31st, and we have a lot of free time. So
we do have a lot of free time. We do.
So you went to Western, and you do speak about, you know, at some point in the book, you go to a career fair and you make this choice of going to Western. Do you regret that decision at all?
No, not at all. I've thought about that quite a bit because, like, for background, for those who haven't read it, I am from Toronto. I'm an only child. I grew up very, very sheltered. I grew up raised by my grandparents and had all the love, had all the attention, and just really never had like an idea of what like university was. I was the first in my family to go to university. Actually, when I moved to Western, I took everything in my room, like socks, like my TV stand, like every pair of underwear, every pair of, like everything. So I had no idea what I was getting into. And one thing for me, like you said, was I was so worried about would I fit in there? And I wish I had a book like this book, because 10 years ago, I'd be on forums being like, is this school racist? And it was so hard to really find out if a school is racist. How do you measure that? So my plan was to go to Ryerson and live at home. But when I went to Ryerson, which is kind of hilarious because I ended up doing my master's of journalism at Ryerson, I was like, oh, this doesn't seem very diverse. So I chose Western. God knows why, but I kind of just wanted to have fun. Like I really had like, I was kind of a loner. I was like a Black emo kid and then like a Black death metal kid. So I had no friends, which is fair to say. And I just wanted a different experience. So I went, and like, do I regret it? No, not at all, because I think I had to learn those things. Like, I didn't know any of that. Like, my family, I live with my mom's side of the family, and they're Pakistani and Irish. They're from Karachi, Pakistan. And so there were so many things I was not exposed to, but going there, I learned those things, and I'm better for it now. So, like, did it suck? It really sucked, but I really don't regret it. I think it was a better decision at that time in my life to go to Western than to go to Ryerson.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of struck by, I mean, personally, I had such a different university experience. I made the choice to stay home because I just like could not justify spending the money to, I mean, not even spending money I didn't have to kind of go to a university where I would have to like have that dorm experience. And I was actually quite jealous of my friends who had the freedom to like experience all these things where it's like, I'm just kind of commuting home and back and, you know, like not having the experience that I saw in like film and read in books. So like, it's cool to hear that you didn't regret that choice. I think reading your memoir, I was a bit struck at times at how I know you talked about experiences with other Black students and like your friend group, but like I kind of struck at how like lonely it seemed at times. And what I wanted to ask is, what support systems do you wish you had while at Western, like things the university could have provided to you as a student to help you navigate? Like, this is a pretty traumatic and new experience, like leaving high school and then like being launched into this like space when you've been living at home this whole time. Like what is something like not just you but other students where that you think universities need to like step up and provide, especially for racialized students?
Yeah, so like, again, going into it, and it's in the book, I wasn't considered like Black, like you're a Black person, until I got to London. So there was so many different layers of identity I was navigating. And I don't even know if universities do it well right now, because there's literally, you walk into a campus, there is no center that says like, you know, like, I don't know, like the racial support center or something, like, you know, like racial, you know what I mean? Like support for racialized students. Like there's nothing. And when you're new and your palms are sweaty and you're holding your map on campus and you're like, oh God, where is everything? You don't know where anything is, like your classes are, let alone where the support is. And I think that what would have been better would be to have actual groups formed, or have during orientation week when I went to have, you know, like sessions or workshops for students who were coming in who were not white, like something to just kind of signify that, hey, we're here, we know this is an issue. And I think the closest thing we have on campus is like a diversity and equity office. But who wants to go to the like diversity, equity, inclusion office? It's not somewhere I would go. And one of the things that I touch on in the book is that there's a moment where I'm on campus and I'm harassed by a white guy, and I go to campus police and they're like, well, we can't do anything. And they didn't even know where to send me. And when I was researching the book, I realized that there was like a racial ethno inclusion office on campus, but they only deal with like Ontario human rights complaints. And being called like the N-word on campus, you cannot file a complaint for that. So there's nowhere in between. So I think that having like workshops and even like getting students involved, like having on-campus things where there are workshops, you talk to students, you talk to faculty, you develop programs to help incoming students and then students who are dealing with this, because the big thing is that there are a ton of like race-based incidents that don't fall under the law as a hate crime, but they're happening, and literally there's nowhere to go if you're a student.
Yeah, it's like just thinking about just like dumb little microaggressions that you experience as a student at like these universities that kind of tout themselves as these like safe, like these bastions of progressive idea, but like you have people saying dumb shit to you like all the time.
All the time. And the stuff is so insidious. Sometimes you're like, did that really happen? Like, you know, like, was that wrong? I don't know.
What I loved reading about your book is speaking to about like kind of the anti-Black racism that you experience from not just white people, but from other people of color. Like, I know we like to sometimes put ourselves, it's not us putting ourselves, other people like to put us under this like umbrella of diversity, but it's like a lot of this stuff that I experience, the stuff that your experience is coming from not just like white faces. And you know, is there something that you like, are there ways that you think non-Black people of color can be better allies, or can they even be allies to Black students in these spaces?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I think that the way that the same standard that we hold white people accountable to be allies should also apply to people of color and who are not Black, because it functions in the same way. And in the book I talk about, you know, like I dated a brown guy, like a guy who was from New Delhi, and had the same experience as if it was a white guy. So I think that for a lot of people of color, they think because they are people of color that there's like, you can't be racist, or you can't say racist shit or what have you. So I think there is some room to, you know, to be a better ally. But I also think that like we need to hold people of color to the same standard that we hold white people, because it's the same stuff replicated that comes out of their mouth.
Okay, what is, and also speaking about experiencing this like anti-Black racism from people of color, you speak a lot about navigating your identity as someone whose father was Jamaican, your mother's and her family are from Pakistan, and you were raised by your mother's family. And you do speak about their initial reluctance to acknowledge your Black identity. When you were actually like in the moment at Western and experiencing like this racism, this racial violence, did you ever have those conversations with your mother like while it was happening, or is that something, or is that a conversation you had with her like after the fact?
I think I tried to have them. For those of you who like haven't read the book yet, there's like a part where I try to talk to them. So my family is from Karachi, Pakistan. When they came here in the 70s to Toronto, like they were told to go back to their country all the time. And now it was happening to me, and I was being told to go back to my country. And they had such a hard time understanding, one, why anyone would say that to me when I was born here, but also they had assumed that because they had kind of dealt with that racism, it was completely over. So there are some instances where like I was either like threatened with violence or attempted to be attacked or whatnot. And when I would tell them, they would like very kind of just be like, are you sure? Like, are you sure that happened? I can't believe people would do those things. And my family has always been like incredibly supportive of everything I wanted to do. I think this was hard for them to understand. And I think that like it got to a point where I stopped telling them around like third year, because it was just kind of like I was telling them and I was almost sitting in silence, like they didn't know what to do with this information. And when I moved back to Toronto after graduating, I've been out in public with my mom and been called the N-word, or I've been in a line and had a white woman attack me. And I think now that they're with me, they kind of see it. And I think even up until the book coming out, or me being like, I'm writing a book about me being a Black woman, like up until that point, they still were just like, but like you're one of us. And I'm like, but no, I'm really not. I don't pass, like I cannot put on a sari and go down the street and people will laugh at me. It doesn't matter what I look like. It doesn't matter what they think I am. That's not how I present. That's not how I feel. And so even just the book alone has been a huge shock to them, but I feel like we're all on the same page now, and they are like the greatest allies that I could ask for.
I'm so curious, what was your mom's initial reaction to like reading this book in full?
Oh gosh, so I let everyone read it except for my mom and my grandfather. So when I know it was very bad of me, I was so afraid, because we're like a very liberal family, and like my grandfather is the first one in the entire family to refuse to be in an arranged marriage. He's very liberal. But this was just like next level to me. She'd be like, I'm talking about my like boyfriends or my partners and like all this stuff. My mom, I gave her the book like 2 months ago. And she texted me, I was at work and she texted me, and she actually loved it and she loved the writing, but she was like super emotional. Her and my grandfather like were like crying, and it was a whole thing, and just wanted to know how they could have better supported me, which they really couldn't. My grandfather was very surprised. He's like, but like you partied? And I'm like, that's not like these are your concerns right now. You know? And yeah, I was like, you know, like it really made me like realize that people have this idea of like what their children are, and they have this idea of what I was. And I can still do all those things. I can party hard. I can whatever. I can sleep with everyone I want. I can do all those things and still be your kid. But I think it was like a bit of a shock.
Yeah, no, like just like trying to think of writing a very honest portrayal of like my life, ages like 18 to like to my early 20s, and showing it to like my parents. Like I don't even let my dad friend me on Facebook. I have like blocked his friend requests. I'm just like, you don't need to know.
Yeah, you don't need to know. And like I thought about that, because like the first couple of drafts were like a TMZ expose. And I'm like, this is not good. Like, this is not what I want. How can I do this in a way that's respectful? How can I like cut out like the sex stuff that's not necessary? And like kind of the way that I've stood by it is that I like my kind of tagline now is that like, regardless of what's in that book, every woman I know has been through that. Like whether it's like being assaulted in a club or just sexually assaulted, or like, you know, walking down the street and catcalled. There's so much in that book that everyone I know, whether they want to talk about it or not, have been through. And I just felt like I had the platform to write it, so why not write it? And, you know, and, but they're very excited about it now. Now that it's all like that messy part is done, they're very excited.
Okay, I'm very glad to hear that. Like, yeah. I feel like reading the book, I kind of know your mom a little. I'm like, she seems so cool.
She's super cool. And like my mom was worse. My mom used to race guys in the street. Like my mom is like 1,000 times worse. Like she was like, this is soft. So I'm like, okay, I feel better now.
For anyone who hasn't like read the book, there's just the first description of your mom is like someone with like bleach blonde hair and like she seems so cool. I want to meet your mom.
Yeah, she's just in the next room. She's like got like facial piercings, tattoos, like every other word is fuck this, fuck that. Like it's just, she's a hoot.
That bit where she kind of like talking to you about defending yourself, and she's like, just fuck anyone up who tries to fuck with you. If like the school asks about it, tell them I said to do that.
Yeah, that's how I got through school. I was very overweight. My grandma had just died and kids were making fun of me. And like, yeah, so for those who haven't read it, my mom, there's a scene where like, I'm like sad because I'm getting bullied and my mom is in the car and she's smoking her cigarette in the car and like her like labret piercing is like glistening in the sun. And she's like, you know, if anyone fucks with you, you fuck them up. And you fucking tell the principal that I fucking told you to do it. And then she sent me on my way and I got in trouble. I beat someone up and then the principal was like, or the teacher was like, well, why would you do that? And I'm like, my mom told me to do it. And she called my mom and came back crying. So that's her. She hasn't changed at all.
You know what? I have no choice but to stand and respect your mom.
She'll love that. I'll tell her.
Okay, sorry, give me 1 second. I'm getting... Oh, you know what? Someone wants to know if you can read a part of your book for anyone who hasn't read that. Can you please do that?
Yeah,
I should have asked that.
For sure. All good. I was actually I like bookmarked it here. I was actually gonna read from towards the end, which is, so towards the end, I'm gonna read from this chapter called The End of the Rainbow, which is taken from the For Colored Girls play. So in my last year, I was like very like down, just very depressed, was not leaving the house. And so this chapter is about kind of finally finding like women who look like me. And it was in a fourth year Black women in history class. And like, it was the first time I had seen like all these Black girls in one space. And so it was really-
sorry, you cut out for like 2 seconds.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah. So it was the only place where like I had seen, well, all of us had seen Black girls in one space. So this class became this place every Wednesday where we would like talk and chat and commiserate. So the chapter's about that. And at the same time, that inspired me to put on a direct For Colored Girls at Western. So that was the first like all Black cast at that school in like God knows how long, probably the only time. And
oh my God.
Very likely. Fun fact, one of the teachers who was at Western for many years, so he was there, For Colored Girls was put on in 92, and it was put on by white women, and Black women were not allowed to be part of the cast.
Oh my God, when I was like a kid in middle school, my school put on an all-white production of Hairspray. Oof. The songs hit a lot different.
Everything, the rhythm, the songs, and everything. So
quite bad.
Very bad. You don't even have to tell me. So yeah, so I'll read from that. And so this is just about us meeting and just sisterhood and why it's important for Black women. So this is The End of the Rainbow. Fourth year had just begun when Zadie told me she was thinking of transferring out of Western. I just can't take it anymore, she said. Her body caved in like a deflated balloon. Zadie was tired of all of it. The drunk white girls who followed her around bars asking to touch her hair, the white guys who harassed her and the men who wanted to experience her, the stares of curious people and the anti-Black slurs it seemed she heard more often than her own name. She dreaded the racially inappropriate comments from students who claimed they meant no harm, and the uncomfortable whiteness of her PhD program. Her health was suffering too. She was so depressed and anxious about living in London and being a student at Western that she couldn't even get out of bed in the morning. I told her to just hold on. It seemed more tragic to uproot herself in her final year of her degree. She had met some amazing people, women who were going through it with her. We would support her. Was it so bad that she couldn't wait a few more months? Though I Though I knew better than to defend staying here a minute longer, I didn't want to acknowledge that this place had the power, after everything we had already been through, to claim a Black woman's university career. But Zadie was gone before the end of the school year. On numerous occasions, I had also considered leaving Western. I had weighed all the pros and cons, the hardships that I experienced on a daily basis, and the new and possibly more challenging discomforts of switching schools. I had told myself that it wasn't that bad, even as tears of dread filled my eyes at the sound of my morning alarm. I tried all kinds of remedies to comfort myself: eating, drinking, watching movies, taking long baths, working out, writing, in the feeble hopes that I'd find some interest and enjoyment in life again. Yet, like Zadie, I walked through campus hunched over an invisible pain, unsmiling and unhappy, in a constant daze of misery. I had made several great Black female friends over the past few years, whose presence helped me keep my sanity, but I missed my friend Malcolm. Over text, he told me he was thriving at his new school that he had transferred to. As a Black man in his new environment, he was feeling pretty good about his choice to leave Western. Towards the end of my third year, I walked by a flyer in the Women's Studies department advertising a new course called Black Women's History in Canada. It was the first time it was being offered in years. Like many Afrocentric electives at the school, the department hadn't been able to fill the minimum seats needed to move it forward. This course was a deliberate and significant attempt to introduce more knowledge about Black women's history into the curriculum. I signed up, hoping it wouldn't get canceled again, and waited for the class list to fill up. On the first day, I walked into a room full of Black women and other women of color. I looked at their faces, excited, nervous, relieved. They smiled at me as I took my seat. My muscles slowly untightened, my jaw unclenched. My sharp edges, the ones I carried as protection, that refused to let anyone get close, blurred into unfamiliar smoothness. A gentle yet rapid stream of emotion flowed through me. I was home. The course was the meeting spot we had been desperately searching for. We laughed and cried and shook our heads and eye-rolled at stories of each other's experiences of racism, sexism, and student life. We bonded over our mutual exotification stories, the dreaded I never kissed, slept with, danced with a Black girl before, and other Black girl woes that plagued us while living in London: online dating, sexually racist pickup lines, nightlife, classroom politics. We talked about ourselves, our relationships, our identities, our homelands. We were angry with one another, and we cheered on each other's successes. Our experiences of objectification and exotification were alarmingly similar, as were our responses: rage, sadness, humiliation, distress, shame, depression, resilience. There was no one here to tell us that we were exaggerating, that we were just bitter, that our anger and pain was unjustified. For 3 hours every Wednesday, we were finally able to put down the heavy burden that we had just been carrying on our backs throughout the week and just be in good company. The consensus was that we weren't getting what we needed at Western, academically, emotionally, and spiritually. The class was a quiet place to vent and a site of communal encouragement and commiseration. We were shoulders to weep on, bodyguards for one another, voices of reason, familiar faces on campus. There is something life-changing about Black female friendship, especially during a dark time. We know pain, but we also know it won't last forever. We know the transformative power of joy and laughter, the strength of womanhood, the support of a good or an empathetic head nod. We know that Black female friendship can keep you alive, that sisterhood is essential to survival, but sisterhood is not just about building an unbreakable support system of boss bitches. It's possibly the only space where Black women are allowed to safely be the opposite: soft, emotional, vulnerable. It's also a place to celebrate our successes and triumphs and to admit that the burden of acting the part of the unbreakable Black woman is crushing us. Black girl magic is a term that was popularized in 2013 by Kashawn Thompson to celebrate all the dopeness, beauty, and strength that encompasses Black women and Black womanhood. Yet however glorious Black girl magic may be, it can trap us, once again labeling Black women as superhuman and impervious to pain. Black girl magic should be about celebrating our resilience, but also about admitting when things aren't right. And sisterhood gives us a place to talk about both. So yes, that's from the end. Thank you.
I did get very emotional the first time I read that chapter.
Yeah. It's how, like, in what way or why?
It took me back to a time I feel like, yeah, we all have that experience in university, or maybe just like post-grad, where you're just like intense depression, just like the uncertainty of like what your life is going to be like when it all ends, you know, maybe also, yeah, feeling a bit isolated. It just like reminded me of like that period, like, and like when that moment when you kind of break through, like, and there's not maybe a specific reason you do, but just that moment you're like, I don't want to be like this anymore.
Yes.
And
yeah.
you like see the like nightstand with like all those empty water bottles, and you're like, oh damn.
Yes. Yep.
I have to move past this. And
Yeah.
whatever that reason is, you just kind of like move, kind of like push forward, and it just made me think of that. I got really emotional.
Yeah, it was one of those chapters that came like quite late in the book that I hadn't even written for a while, but it felt so important to address it, because like you're going through all this, but the only thing that really gets you through is having that support system. And like people, like it's such a different experience to like talk to someone who looks like you and has been through it, and they're like, you're not exaggerating, because everybody else is telling you are, and you gaslight yourself. And so yeah, I'm glad you like that chapter. It's one of my favorites too. I like that one.
Do you have any advice for young people in university right now who, I mean, not right now, no one's in university, people who are experiencing those feelings of like of isolation, of being gaslit, of experiencing, you know, racism, experiencing violence in relationships that they might be in, feeling they can't connect to their family. Like I said, like this book is something that I wish I had read when I was that age. And is there something you'd like to say to or for people, you know, going through those experiences?
Yeah, I think there's a lot in that, but I think the first thing to know is that you aren't exaggerating, and what you are feeling is real. And I think it's so much easier for people to be like, that's not happening, than to acknowledge what is happening. And I think that when we're that age, it's so easy to be like, you're just having a good time, or like these things don't happen to people your age, which is not true, because this age group they're going through some things, like a whole lot of things. Whether it's like in the book, I mentioned that intimate partner violence is young women who are around university age are the most at risk in the country, mental health issues, a shaky economy. And so I think one thing I didn't have at the time that we have now is Black Twitter, and we have stories, and we have like this connection of people. So when you're in a position where you feel like you don't have anyone to talk to about this stuff, well, you actually have the internet. And that, it sounds so weird to say, but like so much, I wish I had Twitter, and I wish I had like, the essays that people, the essays where people are talking about how race interacts with their daily lives, or the books. I didn't really have much of that. And so if you can't find it around you, I think that one way to do it is to like look outside. I think it's very hard to afford a therapist or a counselor when you're in school. And while schools provide counselors, it's about like a 1 year or 2 year wait list. So I think that, if you can find a counselor, if you're able to like afford a counselor or therapist, it's one of the best things you can do. And trying to find someone who is a person of color can really help. And then when it comes down to violence, I just read a piece about this for Flair. We never talk about young women and violence. And in all the COVID quarantine conversations, no one is being like, what happens to those girls who are on campus right now, or, living in off-campus housing. And so I think, creating a safety plan, if you're in a place right now where you're experiencing violence and no one really is believing you, creating safety plans, telling your friends, having a code word like tacos, like, I'd love some tacos right now. And maybe that's code for like, I need you to call the cops, or I'm in trouble, come get me. I think it's important that like this age group, that we don't take it to heart that we're young. Like just because we're young does not mean we're not experiencing things. And I think that gets in our own way. It got in my way. Like when I was in an abusive relationship, I'm like, oh, well, maybe, things like this don't really happen to young people. When I was experiencing all this, I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm just like a young and exaggerating. And we tend to get in our own way that way. Yeah.
I just want to take a moment to remind people that they can still submit their questions for eternity.
Yes.
The little box.
There's some here. There's some
okay.
Here.
We can start, or you can also email info@adbcc.org. But I do have some questions if you're okay with it, if we want to start the Q&A right around now.
For sure. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay, let me see. Let me pull up the first question. Okay, so the first question I have for you, I don't know who it's from, but the question is, in order to record your experiences, you most likely had to relive them. What was your process for reliving the moments? What strategies did you employ to overcome the emotions associated with the difficult experiences you faced while studying at university?
Ooh, it was rough. Like, it was real rough. I had no idea that I was gonna be like knocked down like that. I feel like I worked through all those experiences by writing about it. So I graduated and I was always angry and I was always stressed and my face was always flaring up. I always had pain in my body. I was like still drinking. And I had no idea until I started writing it that I was like, oh, this is unresolved trauma, like undealt with trauma from this horrific experience. And I had not given myself enough credit for being like, you went through hell. It just never felt like I had gone through hell. And I did, because you're surviving in that, in that environment. So reliving it, whew, I spent a lot of days crying because, as a writer and you're writing a book and you have a deadline, you're already isolated. So I stopped seeing my friends to write my book. I wanted this so bad to write this book. So I wouldn't go out with people, but then I'd be alone with myself and alone with my thoughts. And I would just sit there and cry like the entire time, or, my stomach would hurt, or I'd be like, I need a drink. Like, it was really difficult. And when it came to certain chapters, like the chapter Visible Bruises, which is about my ex-boyfriend, I would tell people, I would be like, I'm going to be in a funk for a week after I go through this chapter. So I can't talk to anyone. And I would be miserable. I'd be upset. I'd be in my room. I didn't want to leave my room. And so I started going to see a therapist, which actually really helped kind of make sense of what I had gone through at Western and then while writing the book. And she actually helped me be like, if you're going to write this chapter, what can you do to counteract that? Like, what feels good? So I would like write the chapter, but then, I'd go to the gym to, feel good, or I'd watch videos of dogs and puppies, or I'd journal. And so that's why I went through it. Would I do it again? Absolutely not. Like, if I had to write another memoir like this, I don't think I could do it. It's just a lot on me.
Sorry, give me one second. Oh, apparently, can people see my face now? Someone messaged me saying that they can only see the corner of my face. But I can see myself. Okay.
I see your
Anyways,
yeah.
I don't even like looking at old Facebook statuses, let alone writing, reliving that. That's crazy.
Oh, the Facebooks. Yeah. I lost my hair last year. I lost my hair and I developed, is it vitiligo? Because the chapter where I wrote about my dad, I had not actually considered my dad was a part of the story. And then it brought up all these kinds of weird ass attachment issues, and I was losing my hair. I would not do it again.
Second question, reflecting on your secondary school years in Toronto, what were, if any, some significant parallels in behavior, treatment, and incidents that you observed as a post-secondary student living in a small town?
Okay, I think I got the question. So I actually went to a school that was very, most of the school were Black and Filipino kids. And so it was in North York. And I felt okay there. I didn't, I never struggled the way that I was there or in elementary school. I think what I did realize while I was there was that the way that white people were favored, and the way that when I had white friends, how those white girls were favored over me. You have your popular kids, you have the kids who they win prom, they're they didn't think they were going to win, and the rest of us were just so I think I was able to see how if someone got in trouble, how the punishment differed, right? If someone was talking in class, how a teacher was able to snap at a Black student in a certain way but say nothing about the two white kids whispering behind our backs. And so like I was able to see all those things, but I don't know if I quite understood how they worked because I felt pretty comfortable there, which obviously was not the truth for everyone. But there were times when like I would be in class and a couple of my friends would come in shaken. They were like, I was walking home last night and I got stopped by the cops on my way back from like the basketball court. And I just don't think that I was in a place being so sheltered to understand what those things meant. So they were all around me. I just think I wasn't yet ready to, or I didn't know how to understand it. And I think that's a huge misconception with Toronto is that like, yes, it's multicultural, but that shit happens here all the time. Yeah. We see it now actually with like the Peel School Board, like in Edmonton, like this is really not like, this is not a haven.
Yeah. It's kind of weird that we have this like global reputation of being this like safe haven, and then you see like literally children being handcuffed in schools. It's like so crazy.
Yeah.
I have another question. To your knowledge, were other racialized groups targeted as severely as you while on campus? What action did they take as a result?
I'm not sure if I don't know if I can answer that because I'm not too sure. Like we did, like I did have friends who were South Asian or Asian, and they got a lot of the like, you know, the basic nasty comments about like being Asian or like being brown. And I saw that a lot with my best friend who's in the book who is South Asian. So I'm not sure exactly what they would have gone through. But now when you look at like hate crimes in London, it's hard to see what hate crimes are happening at Western because that information is not documented well. It's mostly against Black people and Jewish people. But that's about all I know from my own experience, at least.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Actually, there were several, not on campus, but outside of campus. There were several people, South Asian people who were victims of hate crimes. There was actually a taxi driver. I think his name was Vijay Bhatia, and he was beaten to death by a white guy. And as he was killed, he was being told to go back to his country. So it actually is very, like, the hate crimes in London are quite high against South Asian people as well.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Let me.
Sure.
Open my phone again. Did you report the incidents to campus officials? And if so, what was the outcome?
Oh, I did. It was not what I expected. So like one of the main reasons I went to Western, the tipping point was not to party. It was because when I went to that orientation, they were like, we have a zero tolerance policy for racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, all the everything. So I'm like, okay, something happens to me, like this is my like insurance policy. And so for those who do not read the book, in the chapter Go Back to Your Country, I talk about being on campus and a white kid asking my boyfriend at the time where to find food, and this white kid is like, shut the fuck up, nigger. And we get into an altercation where he's threatening to beat me up and kill me, and he's just throwing around nigger like it's like for free. And I go to campus police because I didn't know what to do. Went to campus police, and they were like, yeah, we can't do anything about this because there were no cameras. But it was right at the middle of like the campus, like a very busy spot. You're telling me there's no cameras. And so that was as far as it gets. And so when you think about it, I did what I was supposed to do. They couldn't do anything. They didn't offer like any like support. They didn't tell me where I could go because they didn't know themselves. And then it doesn't get counted as anything because they dismissed it. So when I was writing the book, I was trying to find like campus police hate crimes and hate incidents. And I started to wonder like how much of that stuff is not reported in here or recorded in the report because they just dismiss it. That was the first and last time I asked for help.
That is like very sad and also just not surprising.
It's not surprising, yeah.
So what inspired you to write this memoir, and what audience do you hope to reach as a result?
Oh, I like this question. So what inspired me to write it was that like I've always wanted to be a writer, and while I was at Western, I was already doing some journalism stuff. I was doing some freelance work, and I've always liked to tell stories, and I have this very, like, I guess it's a blessing and a curse. I feel like when I need to say something, I have to say it. And I just felt like I had had so many conversations with people at Western who had been through like almost verbatim experiences to mine. And then, you know, traveling the world, meeting people who had verbatim experiences, like no matter where I went, Montreal, Australia, like Italy, like meeting Black students there who had similar experiences, or, you know, South Asian students or Asian students. And I just felt like I was in a place where I could write it. I understand that it takes a certain amount of openness and willingness to do it, and I just felt like I was like, someone had to tell that story, because even today, like if you Google like Black students on campus, you don't find a whole lot. And so it was for all those people who like wanted to say something, or, you know, maybe writing wasn't their thing, or maybe they just were afraid, and so that's the reason I did it. And then what was the next part of the question?
Sorry, give me 1 second. So the first part was what inspired you to write this memoir, and the second part was what audiences do you hope to reach as a result?
Ooh, yes. So the book is for anyone. I think the audience that I'm really trying to reach are the students who are, you know, about to go to university and feel stuck and need something to look to. It's for people in university right now who feel like they're barely hanging on and just, you know, need something in the way that I did, or, you know, you did. And for anyone who really went and like had this experience and came out of it and is still like, what the fuck happened? Because the amount of women I've spoken to who went to school in London in the 80s or the 70s or the 90s or the early 2000s, they're like, yeah, nothing's changed. Like, I read this book and nothing's changed. So it's for anyone who's been in this system and dealt with this, but it's also for educators, for allies, for your friends, for your parents. I think it's a great book for parents because we don't really know what our kids are doing, right? Like, we have no clue what our kids are doing. Prime example. And I think it's a book that you can give to your kids and be like, read this before you go. Like, if you can't be the one to have that conversation, like, give them the book. And so it is for everyone, but I think it's for people like us who are like, oh gosh, like, where is that like glimmer of hope, you know, to get me through this?
Give me 1 second. I have a couple other questions. I don't know if there are any more audience questions. Can you see the chat box?
I got the chat right here. I got a couple of questions.
Okay. I'm gonna make you do 2 jobs. You have to read the question out.
I got it.
You're gonna have to answer it.
I feel like the 911 communicator with all the screens. See. Okay, so Melanie Anthony asked, I have the other experience where here in Canada, because my ancestors are mixed and I can look brown and Black, but I'm really Black because Creole and Mauritius. And I get questioned on my Blackness as one ex-coworker keeps arguing that I was brown as if she knew better than me. So how do I respond to those attacks? And the context is that I guess the coworker is Black but married to a white guy and has mixed children but questions my Blackness. Oh, people are so awful. Yeah, so this is one of those questions where like I feel like you can never win. And I don't necessarily know how to answer this question, but one thing I do for myself, one of my coping mechanisms, because I feel like when you're mixed, you don't fit in anywhere. Like, just because I look like this does not mean I fit in with Black people. If I go to brown people, I'm like, yo, I'm brown. They're like, no, you're not, you're lying. And everyone thinks they have an opinion on like who you are, what you look like, or like how Black you can be, how brown you can be, how whatever. And like one of the things that I've made peace with is being like, okay, everybody wants me to choose a side. Everyone feels betrayed. And I'm cool with just being this, right? Like, I know how I feel when I'm home and eating Indian food or going to my cousin's house and we're playing like Tambola, which is like the brown, like bingo. I'm all part of that, and that's cool. But who I am, like, I decide who I am, and it's really going to be okay. Like, no one needs to get, you know, like themselves in knots about this. And so, I mean, I think the one thing you can do with any, whether it's this situation or any, you know, racial microaggression, whatnot, just stop someone. Just stop someone. Like, your coworker is nosy as fuck. Like, just stop your coworker and just be like, you know what? Like, we don't need to have this conversation, or this is inappropriate. And I think just shutting it down, I think so often for us, we do the emotional labor of trying to like help other people work through their own issues of like race and stuff like that. I think you can just I think it's cool to just shut it down and go to HR if you need to, if you have HR. That's how I would answer that. And we have one more. We have two more questions. Can Eternity's mom stop in to say hello? We always hear so much about her. I can try. Let's see. Hold on.
Yay.
Let's try.
I submitted this question. It was me.
Is it you?
No, it wasn't. Sorry to take credit.
I'm gonna call her because she's in the other room. She'll probably say no, but I'll give it a try. Hi. Hello? Will you come to the room? People want to say hi to you. You want me to tell them you said no? You're popular. Come say hi. Okay. All right, I'll tell them. Bye. So that's also my mom. She says no when she doesn't give a fuck what anyone thinks. She will not be pressured. She said no, but thank you so much. She does not look presentable. Her lipstick's not on, and she does not comb her hair. But thank you. I don't know who set me up.
Thank you for even like entertaining.
I had to try. But yes, that's her. She'll always say no. I like that energy though, right? Never pressured by anything. Plan ahead for next time. My mom will not go on camera until her like face is on. So next time I will try. It's still a no. She's a Gemini, so it could change like this. Like she could say yes and then just say no like 30 seconds before.
Can I also say I'm a Gemini? I love that you mentioned being a Gemini.
Yes!
The most maligned sign.
Oh dear. It is like my mom's a full Gemini and I can tell. I was born on the cusp, so I'm more Taurus, but I've been disowned by Taurians at this point, so I'll just take Gemini. Yeah,
I love this.
Take it, yes. And then Norm said, please make sure to tell people they can buy the book on your website. People need this book. Thank you. And great event, guys. Thank you, Norm. Yes, the book can be bought on a different book list. Yes. Yes. All right.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I have one more question. Are you in touch with any of the people mentioned in the book? Like I know you talk about your friend Taz is mentioned and your friendship kind of breaks down near the end. Has anyone mentioned in the book like reached out to you, or did you contact them to let them know that they would be in the book?
Well, I don't have the best relationships with people in the book. If you've read the book, you'll understand why. But no, I haven't spoken to Taz, my best friend. The only person, actually, yes, I'm in touch with Malcolm, who is my friend from first year, who lives in a different place now. We are in touch. My friend, I don't even remember the name I gave her in the book, Kate. We are very good friends who outdrinks everyone at parties. We are very good friends still. And a couple of people from the End of the Rainbow chapter that I mentioned, still in touch with. A lot of friends I still have from Western who were in the book I'm still friends with. Out of like exes, I reached out to like my one ex. Actually, we bumped into each other everywhere, and I bumped into him on the street one day. And I was like, can you come over? I gotta talk to you about my book. And I was like, I'm just writing about you. Like, you screwed up. And he's okay with it. But he hasn't read it yet, so we'll see what happens. But yeah. We have a couple more. Oh, hi, Kelly. Kelly, what's your advice for folks who want to be better allies, both on and off post-secondary campuses? Also a Gemini. Yes! Also a Gemini. So is my dad, and he's actually a twin. It's bonkers. Yes. That is actually very meta. So yeah, to be better allies. That's a good question. I never know how to answer it. I think the one thing that people really want, it seems so basic and simple, is like we just want someone to listen to us, and we just want someone to be like, okay, that really happened. That sucks. Like I think like when you tell your friends these things. Like when you tell ally friends these things, people want to do so well, but like these things get in the way, like these defense mechanisms get in the way. And I think especially for white people, there's like this fear that we're going to call, like we're insinuating that they're racist. but really they are the ones to jump in, like, I'm not racist. I think like really just being open to experiences. If, you know, if something happened that involved like a white person, not taking it personally, I think is a huge thing. People tend to take that personally, but it's not personal. I think one thing that I've heard from people who read the book was that they had been with friends who were people of color, and those friends had been called names or like threatened with violence out in public. I think you can step in there. And I'm not saying like, if it's violent, just like, you know, get out of there. But I think that there's a place to like step in and not let your friend do those things alone. I think there's many ways to do that. Yeah, it's a very like, I don't know. Do you have any suggestions? It's such a like important question, but I never know how to answer it properly.
I mean, I personally am a huge fan of just cutting people out of your life. Like,
you really are a Gemini.
Where like you don't step up in a big way. I'm just like, well, they're dead now.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. That's very
like,
Gemini of you. Yeah, I think that's good advice too. I think life is too short, and like, it sucks that we have to do the emotional labor of it. There are my friends in the book who, when I'm at the white supremacist wedding.
I was gonna ask about that bitch. What's her deal?
So we are still great. We are still great friends. It's
sorry,
never.
Bitch, she's cool.
We are still great friends, but like honestly, I have not had that conversation in full. I was just like, look, I value your friendship. They have a kid now, and like I think it's a chance to start out. And I was just like, read the book. We can talk after. So
okay.
We'll see what happens. But for the most part, now that I'm older, would I do things differently? Yeah, I would cut people off. But if I felt like, you know, they really wanted to be there and they just didn't understand, I would take the time to kind of, you know, try to educate. But, you know, I'm not getting paid for it.
Okay. Eternity, it was amazing to talk to you. I have two things before we wrap this all up. I just want to mention that this webinar was brought to you by A Different Booklist Cultural Center. And you can order this book from adifferentbooklist.com through our website. We are doing free delivery right now. And how can people get in touch with you if they want to, you know, continue the conversation?
Yes, you can get in touch with me on Twitter. I love to tweet, so it's just at Eternity Martis. Or on Instagram, it's just at Eternity with 3 E's, so ETERNITEEE. And yeah, those are the two ways I will respond back to you on Twitter for sure. I'm pretty bad at DMs on Instagram. And just a little more incentive for buying the book through A Different Booklist. They said this would be fun, is now a Cityline book club pick. So if you buy it now, you can read along with Cityline. Every Wednesday, they're reading along. So buy now, read along, discuss, send your discussion questions to me, all the things.
Amazing. So once again, A Different Booklist Cultural Center. You can visit adbcc.org or their Facebook page to find out about future online events in the time of Corona. Eternity, it was so good to talk to you. I'll hit you up on Twitter.
Let's do it. Yes, let's do it.
I have one question.
Let's do it. Let's hang out.
Being Geminis.
For sure.
Amazing. Thank you everyone who tuned in. I can't see your faces. I know some of you are there. Shout out to all you guys. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I guess we just bye. I guess we just leave the chat.
All right. We leave the chat.
Okay.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.